probably 13 when I first saw 12, 13, Jesus of Nazareth. It was a BBC-made production of Jesus' life, really comprehensive. Was that ever broadcast here? Yeah, brilliant. It used to come on every Easter. I was fascinated by it, about what Jesus could do, but then he was crucified. I just couldn't get my head around that. And I'm like, come down, come down. And I was expecting him to jump off the cross and say, here I am. But no, he didn't. And I never really understood at that age the resurrection. I just assumed it ended at the cross. I'm a little bit older now, a couple of years, and I've grasped something of why that was significant and what it led to. It didn't end with the crucifixion. Easter doesn't end with Good Friday. It just begins. And I want to look at that with you today. It's the third day since Jesus' death. And here's what we're told. Peter read it for us so beautifully. Thanks, Pete. Early on the first day of the week. That's Sunday. The Jewish Sabbath is on the Friday, Saturday rather. The crucifixion took place early Friday morning. So Good Friday, Saturday. It's now Sunday, the third day, which is the first day of the Jewish calendar. Their day begins on Sunday. We're told, from that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things, and he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. It's a significant day, this first day of the week, the third day, because throughout Jesus' teaching, he often referred to it. His disciples had no idea what he was about, but he often referred to the third day, or day 3. They knew it was significant, but no idea why. And so after Jesus' resurrection, he appears to some disciples. They don't see who he is. I'll come to that later. But even they say, look, we'd hoped that he was going to be the one who was going to redeem Israel. What is more, it's the third day since all this took place. So all the disciples knew there was going to be something significant beyond Jesus' crucifixion. Not sure what, but something significant. So on the first day of the week, we're told, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. She's not by herself. There's a few others. We're told, Luke tells us, Mary Magdalene is there, Joanna is there, Mary the mother of James, and others. So it's a whole band of women. Don't know where the men are. They're asleep, aren't they? Right. But the women are there. It shows something of their loyalty to Jesus beyond the crucifixion. And also the men, remember, who are the Romans going to kill next after they've assassinated Jesus? So they're in hiding. Okay, they're letting the women do the work because apparently under the guise that they're safe, no one's going to kill the women. Okay, they're just really having a lie in, aren't they? And so the women there, they go, and we're told they saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. That is really significant. I think to understand how significant that is, it will be the equivalent to turning up to a graveside just after a burial, and the tombstone has been flung aside, smashed maybe, whatever. This is significant. Once you seal the tomb, you didn't open it again, other than to put a second body in there. And so the fact that it's moved, and it was heavy. We're not talking about a little stone. We're talking about a big structure which took a lot of effort to move. In fact, in a lot of these tombs, when the stone was rolled, it rolled downhill into place, locked into place. So to get it back uphill was a significant thing. So for them to see this, they knew, the equivalent of someone's tombstone being pushed over, something significant. So we're told they came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, as Peter said, that's John. For someone to run, do you guys run? Has anybody ever run through TTP? You don't see anybody run, do you? I have. Okay. Right. Because we don't do that, do we? Even in this culture, as I haven't seen Lee run anywhere, other than maybe, if she's trying to keep fit. We don't do that, do we? In that culture, it was a disgrace to run as an adult. That's what kids did, not an adult. So for these women to run, this is serious, isn't it? This is urgent. They go to Simon Peter because he was the one. Everyone knew there's Peter and John and James, the favourites. They weren't favourites, but Jesus gave them special training, special attention because of the grandeur of what they were going to do as leaders of the church. And they says, look, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they've put him. So what are they assuming? The stone's gone, the tomb's open. What are they assuming? Look, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb. Who? Romans. The Romans or the Jews. Whoever, most probably the Romans. Because in order to really, quash this movement, to desecrate Jesus' body, to show what they thought of this leader, so-called king of the Jews, in order to really turn the screw, the women assume they've taken his body, desecrated, which is actually illegal under Roman occupation. You'd actually be imprisoned for it. And so they assume that's all that could have happened. They've desecrated the tomb. They've taken his body to humiliate this movement. And so Peter, we're told verse 3, Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. They're going to go and find out what's happened. Okay, both were running. The other disciple, that's John. He writes the gospel, but puts himself outside of it in this sense. Outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He's obviously the slimmer one, okay? runs well. He, John, bent over, looked in and saw the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Why doesn't he go in? Why won't he go in? Pardon? Yeah, this is a tomb. These are eerie places. Dead bodies. Look, I've got a friend who lives opposite a cemetery in the UK. I was like, what are you doing? Don't you get scared? How can you live opposite a cemetery? What about all those dead bodies? There's an eerie thing about the place of the dead, isn't there? And besides that, if this has been desecrated, who could still be inside? Yeah, the culprits. I had a house in South Wales one of the times, living up in North Wales in my first church. I had a phone call that somebody wants to view my property, which I was trying to sell, but my tenant wasn't letting them in. So I went 4 hours down south to open up the place myself because this guy wasn't responding. We couldn't get in. The locks had been changed, to my surprise. I had to get a locksmith, okay? He broke in, okay? And the place was transformed inside. The curtains were closed. What was growing there in the living room? Yeah, okay. Cannabis. When my place had been turned into a drug growing factory. And so we're having a bit of a laugh, except it's not funny. And I decided to walk upstairs just to see if my bedrooms are okay. Okay. Guess what I was confronted with? There's a guy sitting there in front of the TV playing on his PlayStation, oblivious to the fact that we're in the house. So high on, he was stoned. What do you think I did? Yeah, I think I did. I wasn't going to sort that situation out. Okay, look, John won't go in because who may be there? There's no way he's going in there. Not if you've got any sense about you, your wits about you, okay? Simon Peter arose, verse 6. He's the one. What do we know about Peter? When Jesus is walking on water, what does Peter want to do? He wants to walk on water. I mean, who does that? Seriously, if you're in a boat and Jesus is walking on the water coming towards you, who's going to say, can I come and walk with you? Who's going to say that? Peter. And so he goes straight in. He doesn't care, okay? He went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded by itself, separate from the linen. What's that tell you? So Jesus' body has apparently been stolen. The tomb has apparently been desecrated. What would you expect? Has anybody ever had a burglary? Yeah. Which burglar tidies up his mess before he leaves? This is weird. It's totally weird. Somebody or somehow the cloth is folded neatly. And hey, I know clothes aren't worth much these days. Well, it depends where you buy them from. Okay. No bed linen. But in that day, that linen that you wrapped dead bodies in was worth a lot of money. It was an act of, in today's age, particularly some cultures, their burial, their caskets are worth like 15, 20K. People can pay that much just for the casket. Seriously. Because it's what you do as a show of respect and love towards the dead, isn't it? You're willing to spend money. Linen was worth a lot of money. If you were desecrating a tomb, you would not leave the linen behind. You take it with you. So the fact that it's there says something very, very, very significant. Look what Peter does. Luke tells us he went away wondering to himself what had happened. What's he thinking? Retrospect is a brilliant thing, isn't it? They had no idea what Jesus was talking about when he talked about rising from the dead. Because the Messiahs don't die. They had no idea he was going to die. So when he talked about rising from the dead, they thought, it must be one of those weird things that Jesus was always saying. He was always saying these enigmatic things and no one could understand. He went away wondering to himself what had happened. Could Jesus have risen from the dead? Was he even thinking that? Did he want Jesus to come back from the dead? What had Peter done 3 days earlier? Look at it. Luke tells us, "Woman, I don't know him. Man, I am not one of his disciples. Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Peter had denied 3 times. And he was the one who said, remember what he said? When Jesus said, "One of you is going to betray me?" "Not me, Lord." And of all the disciples, he was the one who says, "I don't know the man." And so I don't think Peter even wants to believe that Jesus is alive. Because if he's alive and he's denied him 3 times, and he's the leader of the group here, he's the leader of the pack, what's going to happen to him? What's Jesus going to say? What's he going to say to Jesus? I don't think Peter even wants Jesus to be alive. Verse 8 tells us, finally John reached into the tomb. Okay, he'll reach into him first, went inside. Now that Peter's gone in and, now that he knows it's safe. Okay, Mr. Chicken. Right. He goes inside. He saw and believed. You see, John, if you listen to my sermon on Friday, what did I say? Who was at the cross when Jesus was being crucified? How many disciples were there? John. Thank you. Only one disciple stuck it out with Jesus. Only one. And so John can easily believe, because if Jesus is alive, what's he going to do for John? Okay? So he's got every reason to believe. Faith, when people say I don't believe in God, there's always a rationale for that. We often don't want to believe in God because we don't want a God to be real, do we? Because if there's a God who's real, what does that mean about the way we live? It means it matters. It means someone is watching us. It means we better be nice to each other. Okay, even when no one's looking, because God can see. So John has no reason not to believe. He comes to faith. Verse 9, they had still not understood from scriptures that Jesus had to rise from the dead. So he hadn't quite understood what had happened, but he knew Jesus was alive. And it's easy to believe that. What had Jesus done to Lazarus just earlier in Jerusalem? And he'd been dead how many days? So Jesus had been dead. So if he can raise someone from the dead who's been dead 4 days, the chances are he can raise someone from the dead who's been dead 3 days. Okay? We're not talking 5, we're talking 1 less. Look, they saw what he could do. He raised dead people. He walked on water. He made people's eyes. You know, when those born blind, you do realise they may not have even had eyeballs. Well, at least functioning ones. And what did Jesus do? Make it. Okay. So John can believe. Look, someone who can raise a man who's decayed in the tomb 4 days and says he's God, can surely raise himself from the dead. And he believes. Then the disciples went back to their homes. John all excited, I'm assuming. Peter troubled. He can't be alive. Surely not. What am I going to say to him? How am I going to explain? How am I going to explain what I did? But Mary stood outside the tomb crying. I love this. Look, there's something beautiful about the women over the men. Maybe it's a characteristic of women. But whatever's happened is she just wants to be there. She's not going to walk away from the tomb. Even though Jesus' body is not there, Mary just wants to be here. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels. So these have obviously appeared since. Mary sees them. Or at least they've made themselves visible now, even if they were there before. And they ask, woman, why are you crying? Her response is, they've taken my Lord away, she said. We don't know where they've put him. What does that suggest about the way angels may look compared to the way that we depict angels?
They look like me. Oh dear. Not that bad, surely.
Short, frail, average looking. Sorry, mate. Tall, dark and handsome. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. They don't probably look like, angelic creatures with wings. He's a good-looking guy, that guy, okay? They look like, at times at least, you and me. They look like ordinary guys. She has no idea. She thinks they're men. After this, she turned around. And so what happens next? Sorry, she says, I don't know where they've laid him. At this, she turns around. Standing there is Jesus. But she doesn't realise that it's Jesus. Okay, Jesus has got a resurrected body. Incidentally, you're getting one of these. Are you aware? That resurrected body that Jesus now has, he was crucified and now he's been resurrected. It's a body, but it's changed. It can go through walls. Remember when he goes to the disciples, the door's locked, and then what does he do? He walks through it. He doesn't open doors, he walks through it. But he can also eat. So resurrected bodies have physical and non-physical attributes. Okay? They can walk through walls. Ever fancy doing that? You're going to do that. But he can also eat. He can be wherever he wants, whenever he wants to be. So Jesus has got this special resurrected body. Okay? But the fact that she doesn't recognize him, what does that suggest?
Doesn't look exactly like.
Thanks, Peter. Here's what it is, and this is hope for you, Brian, and for me. Okay? Resurrected bodies don't look the same. Okay? Hey, you might not think I'm much to look at, okay? You're welcome to that opinion. Okay? But I'm going to look different. Okay? I'm going to look handsome. Do you think the different is handsome, Pete? Well, I can hope. I can live in hope, can't I? Okay? I can live in hope, right? That we're going to look different. Jesus looks different. Corinthians tells us, look, what is sown is natural, is raised spiritual. We look different. And Mark tells us that one of the times when Jesus appeared in a different form. In John 20, later on in this gospel, when they're fishing and Jesus appears, they did not realize it was Jesus. So resurrected bodies look different. There's hope for me. Okay? Woman, he says, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for? Thinking he was the gardener, she said, Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I'll go and get him. She's having a conversation with Jesus. She doesn't know it. She has no idea. He obviously looks so different she cannot tell. She doesn't even recognize his voice. She's looking for Jesus and he's standing right in front of her. Friends, do you know, we often wonder, where's Jesus in our suffering, don't we? Thanks, Pete. He's right there. You just don't see it. Where is he when things go wrong? He's right there. We just don't know it. Where is he when you need him most? He's right there. You just can't see him. Where is he when you're crying out in prayer? He's right there. You just don't know it. He's with you. He's with you. He's with you most when you need him the most. You know that poem, Footsteps in the Sand? Was it Footprints in the Sand? Thank you. Thanks, Pete. You're great, haven't you? Can you sit there each week, Pete, and just help me out when I'm getting stuck? All right, there you go. Thank you, mate. I'll help you out. Hey, where is he when we need him the most? He's carrying us. He's with you. Would you remember that? He's with you. Jesus finally says this one word. Mary. And she turns to him and cries out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Why has she finally now realised it's... Sorry, I'll speak up. Why has she now finally realised it's Jesus?
His voice and the way he says her name.
It is that. It's the way he said it. It's the way he said it. Nobody would say the name of Mary to Mary in quite the way that Jesus said it. It was special. You know, for those of you who have got partners, Jane, I'm assuming John says Jane in a way that no other man has ever said it to you. Is that right? Look at it. It's true, isn't it? Jesus says Mary in only the way Mary touched Mary's heart. She knows it's him. She finally realizes it's him. He's alive. He's there. And the story goes on. I'm going to stop. But Jesus is alive. Mary sees him. And Peter said it so beautifully. Jesus, you know, the first is always tops, isn't it? Everybody wants to be first. And guys want to be first. Peter wants to be first. In a culture that women were always second. Sadly. In a culture that women are second. In a world that women have often been second. What does Jesus do for this woman? What does he say about Christianity? What does he say about God? What does he say about women? Hey, the very first person to see Jesus alive, the greatest honour, is given to who? A woman. And the worst of women, we think she was a prostitute. Okay?
The Bible doesn't say that.
No. It's a thought. The worst of women. Possibly. Hey, that's the end of my talk. But let me leave you with this. Jesus is alive. He rose from the dead. There is no other religious system or philosophy that claims its chief is still living. We're the only faith, only religion in the world that claims its Messiah, its prophet, its leader is still alive thousands of years on. Have you put your trust in him? Have you met him? He's real. He's closer than you think. He's right there. Why don't you talk to him if you've never talked to him? Why don't you ask him into your life? Why don't you ask him to be a part of your life? He's your God. He made you. He cares for you. He loves you. He came into this world for you, to die for you. He now lives for you and desires to be your friend, your companion, your God.